All right, so today we're diving deep on Mike's Waffen facts, and specifically episode 187.
Oh, this one's a doozy. Yeah, listeners requested we really break this one down.
They did, and, for good reason, because this episode kind of throws the usual MWF format out the window.
Totally. Yeah, like no Congo Miller, no Gasbold.
No gas bowl.
Not even like a vague top. They had that whole thing in episode 155 with the Arschbomb.
Right, the Arschbomb discussion.
Which, by the way, for anyone who hasn't memorized the entire MWF back catalog,
Yeah, there are a few of you out there, I know.
Arschbomb basically translates to, how do we say this politely?
Let's just say it's their colorful term for a certain type of improvised explosive device.
Yeah, one that features prominently in Mike's stories about his father, Gasbold.
Gasbold, right?
Yeah.
The almost mythical figure in the MWF universe.
Always up to some wild military exploit, whether it actually happened or not.
But what's interesting to me is that even without those familiar elements in episode 187, you still see the core dynamic of Mike's Waffen facts, like it's laid bare.
It's like stripping away all the distractions, and you just see the raw interaction between Mike Rickard and poor Romanka.
It's like a social experiment.
Totally. Yeah, three guys, microphones.
A seemingly endless supply of alcohol.
And you just see what happens.
And what happens is fascinating, to say the least.
Oh, absolutely.
So we see Mike, the self-proclaimed weapons expert.
Prone to exaggeration.
Embellishment, shall we say.
Yeah, remember episode 37 when he went on that whole tangent about the Schwatten incident?
Oh, yeah. Classic Mike storytelling.
Pure might.
And then you have Rickard, the ever-skeptical, conspiracy-loving foil to Mike's boisterousness.
Oh, yeah. He's quick to challenge Mike on the facts, but then he'll veer off into his own tangents, about government cover-ups and who knows what else.
And in that same episode, 37, by the way.
Oh, yeah, of course. Same episode.
And then there's Romanka, the audio engineer, perpetually caught in the crossfire.
The voice of reason constantly ignored.
The butt of most of their jokes.
Remember when he tried to fact-check Mike about that Congo Miller story in episode 155?
Oh, yeah, and Mike just shut him down completely.
It's almost like Romanka represents the audience,
We're there for the ride.
Both entertained and slightly concerned for everyone's well-being.
Exactly. But in episode 187, Romanka's role is even more interesting.
How so?
Well, because there's no set topic. He's not just trying to fact-check or steer the conversation. He's almost like an unwilling participant in their verbal sparring match.
Oh, that's a good point. He's forced to play a more active role, even though he'd probably rather just be behind the mixing board.
Making sure the audio levels are balanced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So with all that in mind, what were your initial impressions when you first listened to episode 187?
Yeah. What stood out to you?
Honestly, just this heightened sense of tension right from the beginning. You could tell, even with the usual clinking of glasses and them joking about their drinks, that there was an underlying energy, like things could go off the rails at any moment.
Interesting. You could sense the storm clouds gathering even before the first clap of thunder.
Exactly. And it doesn't take long for that tension to boil over. They start reminiscing about some past event. I couldn't quite make it out from the mumbled detail.
Yeah, it's kind of lost in the haze of whatever they were drinking.
Right, and of course, Mike throws in one of his signature exaggerations, claiming he single-handedly saved the day.
Oh, classic Mike, always the hero of his own narrative. But you got to admit, even when, he's stretching the truth, there's a certain charm to his storytelling. He just draws you in.
Oh, absolutely. He taps into that primal desire for larger-than-life stories, heroes and villains, epic confrontations. It's like listening to a modern-day bard.
Except the campfire is fueled by cheap whiskey and questionable historical facts.
Exactly, but the interesting thing is how Rickard reacts in this episode.
Oh, yeah. How?
Well, in earlier episodes, he would usually jump right in, challenging Mike's facts, throwing out counter-arguments, maybe even veering off into a conspiracy theory or two.
But in episode 187, he's different. It's almost like he's playing a different game.
Right, he's still skeptical, but instead of directly confronting Mike, he seems to be poking at him, prodding him, trying to get a rise out of him.
Like he's trying to push his buttons.
It's a much more subtle form of antagonism. He's not trying to win the argument. He's trying to unbalance Mike, to expose the cracks in his facade, and it's incredibly effective.
You can almost feel the tension building as they go back and forth. Mike gets increasingly agitated, his voice gets louder, his pronouncements more sweeping. It's like watching a pressure cooker about to explode.
And Romanka picks up on this shift too. He tries to intervene at one point, injecting a bit of humor, trying to lighten the mood.
But it's like trying to put out a forest fire with a garden hose.
Totally outmatched. He realizes that this isn't just playful banter anymore. This is something deeper, something darker. And he's wise enough to step back and let it play out.
And it plays out in spectacular fashion.
Mm-hmm.
The argument escalates. They start digging into each other's past, bringing up old grievances.
Yeah.
You can practically hear the years of resentment bubbling to the surface.
It's raw, it's ugly, and it's utterly compelling.
What struck me is how personal it gets. They're not just disagreeing about facts or opinions. They're attacking each other's character, their values, their very identities.
And that's where things get really interesting from a psychological perspective, because it raises the question, how much of this is genuine animosity and how much is a performance, a carefully crafted persona they've built for the show?
It's hard to say, isn't it? I mean, on the one hand, they're clearly aware of their audience. They know that conflict and controversy drive engagement. But on the other hand, the emotions feel so real, so visceral. It's hard to believe they're entirely manufactured.
I think it's a bit of both, honestly. They've created these exaggerated versions of themselves, these personas that they put on for the show. But over time, those personas have started to bleed into their real lives, blurring the lines between performance and reality.
It's like they've become trapped in their own creation. They've built this cage of conflict and controversy, and now they can't escape it. And we, the audience, are both captivated and complicit in their predicament.
Yep.
We're the ones tuning in week after week to watch them tear each other apart.
And maybe that's the ultimate takeaway from episode 187. It's a reflection not just of Mike and Rickard's dynamic, but of our own fascination with conflict, our voyeuristic tendencies, our need to witness the raw, unfiltered emotions of others, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
It's like watching a car crash in slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
You should look away, but you just can't help yourself. And that's the genius of Mike's Waffen facts. It holds up a mirror to our own darker impulses, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable truth about ourselves.
And that brings us to the climax of the episode, the moment where everything comes to a head. We're going to dive into that in the final part of our deep dive. But before we do, I want to leave you with this thought.
So much tension, right? And then boom, it happens.
Right, like a bomb going off.
Mike just casually makes this comment about some political figure. I'm not even sure who it was.
Someone Rickard clearly despises.
And Rickard just loses. It launches into this tirade.
Yeah.
I mean, it's intense.
Yeah, you can tell he's not holding back.
And what's interesting is how Mike reacts.
Yeah, usually he'd just laugh it off.
Right.
Or turn it into a shouting match.
But not this time. He seems genuinely hurt. Maybe even a little scared. Like Rickard hit a nerve, exposed some vulnerability he's been trying to hide.
It's like he's knocked off balance.
And he gets defensive, starts pleading with Rickard to see his side of things.
But it's too late. The damage is done.
And Ramaka, he just goes silent.
Knows there's no point in trying to intervene.
He's just a spectator at this point.
And then they cross a line, start digging into each other's personal lives.
Bringing up old betrayals, airing all this dirty laundry. It's brutal.
You can feel the years of resentment just pouring out.
And honestly, at this point, I started to question if these guys are even really friends.
Right. Are they just putting on a show for the audience?
And the episode ends so abruptly, they just fade out, mumbling threats and accusations.
It's like the power went out in the middle of a storm.
Leaves you in the dark, wondering what just happened.
And that's what makes episode 187 so brilliant. It's more than just a podcast. It's an experience.
It's a glimpse into the dark side of human relationships.
It shows how even the strongest bonds can be broken, how friends can become enemies.
And it leaves us with so many unanswered questions like, what happens next for Mike and Rickard?
Can they ever repair their friendship?
We may never know. But one thing's for sure, this episode is a masterclass in audio storytelling.
It's raw, unfiltered, and deeply unsettling.
And for anyone who hasn't experienced Mike's Waffen facts, especially episode 187,
Buckle up.
it's a wild ride.